counterinsurgency. There's a huge break in paradigm from third generation warfare to fourth generation warfare. Is you have to focus on the people. The tools we're using here are infrastructure, democracy, money, jobs, compassion, security, hope, and food. Those are the weapons the Marines are using, not 50 cals, not Mark 19s, not 500-pound bombs. The tools the insurgents are using are murder, intimidation, bribes, power, ideology, culture, security, hope. So in third generation warfare, it's very like the math analogy. It's very much like algebra in that you have known variables, and it's like a set math problem in that your tools are you can calculate weapons and troops and stuff like this. In fourth generation warfare, that goes out the window. It's like calculus. You're like doing differential equations with so many variables you can't even keep track of. So the weapons aren't 50 cal Mark 19 troops. You have to have a holistic approach, and like we're doing infrastructure, democracy, money, jobs. Does that? Am I explaining myself?
It makes sense. We're at about 15 minutes, and this is Cap Mines' brief, correct?
Correct.
And can you just say briefly what your role was in the training and preparation for Ramadi 2?
To train for Ramadi 2, we trained highly kinetic because we thought we were going back into Ramadi 1, which was, I mean, it was a most kinetic place in Iraq during 2005 was Ramadi. So we thought we were going back into an environment where you had to bump and bound, where you had to use third generation warfare skills to stay alive. So we trained highly kinetic. Now, once we were proficient at those skills, we started to creep into the counterinsurgency brief. And the way you train for counterinsurgency is Colonel Turner had basically a PME, professional military education, where he called us in and he's explaining this like theoretical stuff to us, like, hey, you got to win the active support of the people. You've got to use the 5 loos, which I'll pull up here. Okay, so to train for the fourth generation warfare fight, you have to have a solid fundamental grasp of third generation warfare, or you will lose. Because if you're out in this counterinsurgency environment and it goes kinetic, and you don't have that bedrock foundation of tactical skills, you'll get Marines killed, and that you can't accomplish the mission that way. After you've got that foundation built, you move up to these more theoretical type counterinsurgency stuff. And the way that we trained was we looked at these 5 LOOs, which are lines of operations. And the 5 LOOs are governance, economic development, essential services, security, and training the indigenous forces. So how did we train to that? Well, we had guys go to Arabic class. We had guys reading economic books. And a lot of this stuff was put on the like lieutenant level, like, hey, lieutenant, read this book on economics, come back and be able to brief us on Keynesian economics. Hey, this dude, I want you to do a Google alert for the city of Pasadena's city council. They're sending the stuff back. But we were really kind of throwing this all together. Like we were kind of learning how to do this because this is a new concept. So now that we're looking back, the way they'll train for this next deployment will be even more focused on this type of stuff than we were the first deployment. The first training cycle for the second deployment, we focused mainly on the kinetics. Once we got good at the kinetic portion, the third generation warfare piece, we then shifted into the PME piece where we did a lot of like classroom time instruction.
And can you say a little bit about Mojave Viper and particularly how it improved in your view?
Mojave Viper, the Marine Corps has done an excellent job making that training evolve into something that helps Marines out on the deck. When you did RCACs, you did a desert mech, you did a desert mechanized attack against a non-moving opponent. So you get very good at functional skills, shooting your weapon, all this stuff. But you never get good at any of the stuff like you're fighting a counterinsurgency battle. For us in Ramadi, it's an urban counterinsurgency battle, and you never get trained to do any of that stuff that you're going to do, like working with the Iraqi army, fixing sewer water trash, doing all this stuff. When we deployed the first time, we did RCACs, and then we did SASO, March Air Force Base. The Marine Corps combined those two events to make Mojave Viper, which takes you through like a 14-day kinetic, very third-generation warfare package where you're shooting more rounds. It's the best training in the Marine Corps because you're shooting the most rounds and you have the most feedback. So you're getting proficient at your weapon system. You're building that foundation.
What type of feedback do you get?
You get tactical feedback. You get like very pragmatic feedback on like, hey, you're BZO in your weapon system model. When your guys are shooting, they're not looking through their scope correctly, and that's causing them to miss. You get that level of feedback back to make your third-generation warfare skills better.
And then Mojave Viper, where's that located?
It's located here in 29 Palms. So the first part of Mojave Viper, you're out at like ranges, shooting static ranges. The second portion is in a mountain town called Wadi Al Sahara, and you go in and they bring in like 500 actors, probably 100 of whom are Iraqi, and it's a living, breathing village, and you go in and you run lanes in there for like a week, and then you do a 4-day FEX at the end that's a live 24-hour evolution, and it's phenomenal training.
And that's just 4 to 5 miles over the ridge.
Correct.
And being a resident unit at 29 Palms, you feel 3-7 had some advantage in terms of preparing?
Yeah, and 7th Marine Regiment units shoot more rounds than any other Marine unit in the Marine Corps, hands down, because we have the training area. You go to some of these other bases, they have limited ranges they can shoot. So we have more ranges, and the guys, there's nothing to do out here, so the Marines leadership pushes them. I mean, we're always in the field shooting. So that definitely gives 7th Marines a leg up. And then we don't do 7th Marines in this rotation to Iraq, we don't do an off cycle. So a Marine unit from one of the coasts, Pendleton or Lejeune, they go to Iraq and they come back, then they do a MU. 7th Marines, we go to Iraq, we come back, then we go to Iraq. We go to Iraq. We don't do an off cycle. So our guys have 3 to 4 deployments. We constantly have resident knowledge of Iraq, which helped us succeed. I believe 2-7 and 3-7 did very well in Ramadi and the greater Fallujah area, and I think that was because their 7th Marine just makes a good infantry battalion to fight that.
Was there more crosstalk between the battalions and 7th Marines?
I think so. There is more crosstalk because we're the only battalions out here. So there's only 4 infantry battalions on 29 Palms. If you go to one of these other bases, they have 3 or 4 regiments. So it's just more dispersed.
We just pause the tape here for a second.
Yes.
So that's